Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel. You're watching TechStrong TV. Today's Wednesday, May 27th. Wow, did I really just say that? We're almost into June. But we are. We've been doing, this is the 41st episode of TechStrong TV. So we are, my goodness, in our 8th week here, beyond, and 9th week. And wow, time has flown. I hope you all are having a good week coming off a long weekend. Perhaps where you are, things are opening up a bit and you're enjoying a little bit more of the outside of life. I hope everyone is still being careful. There's still danger, from this COVID virus and disease. But we're here. And tech is strong and tech goes on, hence TechStrong TV. Also, TechStrong Con, our conference, which is June 4th, and now has over almost 50 speakers, 12 hours strong, 50 speakers confirmed, 4 different tracks. Check out TechStrongCon.com for information. I think you'll really enjoy it. Also, as usual, you can, whether you're watching this streamed live or on demand, you can use our Slack channel at techstrongtv.slack.com to ask questions of us or any of the guests. We'll get it over to them. And thanks for joining in. Let me tell you what we have in store for today, Wednesday, the 27th. First of all, I'm really happy to have Jeff Hudson from Venafi. Jeff is the CEO of Venafi, and they recently announced the acquisition of JetStack. And really, Jeff makes such a great case here. When we talk about certificates and identity, we've concentrated on people's identities, and sometimes neglected to realize that every machine we deal with has an identity. And I don't just mean IoT devices and stuff like that. I mean, you have to recognize that every virtual machine we spin up, every Kubernetes cluster we spin up, all have their own unique identity and can be used by nefarious or mal actors to wreak havoc. And this is kind of the mission of Venafi. It's also now the mission of JetStack, and it sounds like a great acquisition. Jeff is going to tell us more about it. After that, I'm happy to be joined by Anna Mazur and Justin Graham from Snicker and Docker, respectively. And Snicker and Docker just announced a new partnership where information contained in Docker registries and Docker deployments will be scanned for security by SNCC. Pretty cool technical partnership, and the folks at Docker are real excited, as are the SNCC folks, and we'll hear more from them on that. And then pulling out of the something old category for today, I went back to RSA 2020, not too old, and it's an interview that our managing editor, Charlene O'Hanlon, did with Jim Rivas. Jim, of course, is the CEO, co-founder of the Cloud Security Alliance, and Jim always has interesting things to say about cloud security and what's going on, the state of the community. So we'll hear what Jim had to say at RSA. Then we'll do our normal news, turn things over to Charlene O'Hanlon, who has a good interview with my friend John Jeremiah, product marketing manager at GitLab. And then after that, we'll head things over to the analyst corner with Mitch, where Mitchell Ashley has a good segment today on embrace or replace. And he'll tell you more about that, as well as a engineering DevOps video with our own Mark Hornbeek, also from Accelerated Strategies Group. And then I'll be back to wrap things up. So it sounds like just another great TechStrong TV day here on Wednesday. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with our first guest.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Okay, our first guest today is Jeff Hudson. I know Jeff about 10 years now. He's the CEO. Actually, he's the CEO of Venafi about that long. Jeff has been in the tech world for a long time, like I have, and he's really driven Venafi to the very top of their market in terms of securing our machine and digital identities. And they've recently announced the acquisition of JetStack. Jeff is going to tell you why and why he's so excited by it and what it means for the market. But also check out some of the photography Jeff's done. He's a pretty amazing photographer, if I say so myself. Anyway, here's Venafi CEO Jeff Hudson.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everyone. Okay, for our next segment here, we're really happy to have Jeff Hudson, the CEO of Venafi. Jeff, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Alan, it's great to see you again. We started meeting like this maybe 10 years ago.
You know how often people, you're not the first person to give me that pickup line, Jeff. I got to be honest with you. A lot of people tell me this. I know, and I fall for it every time. What can I say? I'm easy. Hey, Jeff. Now you made me lose my train of thought. But Jeff, before we get started, I wanted to just say a quick word about the background you're using here. We're talking off camera, and I want our audience to know that this is not a Zoom background you're going to find on zoombackgrounds.com or something like this. This is actually an actual photograph that you took at 3 a.m. while in London. Well, not now in London, but previously. And I got to tell you, man, what a shot that is. Amazing. Love it.
Thank you. Yeah, I got the Thames at the right time. There was no wind, and everything came out fine. I kind of thought it was going to be a good night, so I set my alarm clock, got up at 2 o'clock, walked across the bridge over to Butler's Wharf, and took the picture.
Really nice. Anyone ever ask you if you want a license? Maybe you could start your own Zoom background site in case this Venafi thing doesn't work out. Look,
Yeah, I've got this job is more than a full-time job. So that's a hobby. You
don't have to tell me, and we need hobbies because, I'm long story, but we have just been running like the Jackson Browne song, Running on Empty. We have been running now for about 2.5 months. We're taking Friday off as a mental health day. And it's going into the long Memorial Day weekend. So 4 days, I told my team I don't want them, other than emergencies, on email or doing anything work-related. We really need a recharge, and we're going to transition out of fire drill mode, let's call it, into new normal mode and get on with our business here.
Well, even during a war, the boats will go to dock, and the soldier or the midshipmen will have shore leave, even during a war. They have to.
Absolutely.
That's what we all need. We need to take a break.
Yeah. Otherwise, you can have burnout. Burnout's already an issue in our industry, right? So it's important. But we've got time between now and then, Jeff. So let's do some talking here. Venafi announced an acquisition. I guess it was still this week. Well, today's Wednesday. We filmed this on Wednesday.
On Thursday.
Friday last week, you announced the acquisition. But for maybe folks in our audience who haven't seen it yet, why don't you give us the scoop?
Sure. So just a little context first, because not everybody understands Venafi, and so let me just set some context.
Excellent point.
Start with the fact that there are now two actors on a network, people and machines. People use usernames and passwords to identify themselves to machines, and then machines have to identify themselves to each other all along the chain. They don't use usernames and passwords. Machines use machine identities. The number of machines is going through the roof. We spend about 10 billion a year protecting human identities. We're just starting to protect machine identities. The bad guys steal identities. They use them in theft. And now with zero trust, this whole new realization we have no perimeter, identities become security. And so what we have done is created the technology that the world's largest, most advanced, digitally transformed organizations are using to protect the machine identities on which digital transformation is built. So that's the context. So now to the
let me
acquisition.
stop you there for a
Sure,
second,
go ahead.
Jeff.
Probably the best definition of why it's important for digital identity security and protection that I've heard. And I just want to add one thing to that. We did some work with the folks at Appian recently, right? And I spoke with their CEO about the convergence of human identity, robotics, AI, RPA, how all these things are coming together. In today's world, right now, right? This was a problem when you first joined Venafi years ago, but 10 years ago. But right now, today and going forward, 10 years ago, you were maybe a little premature or you were out ahead of the market. This thing is so big right now, right? I don't know if you would know the number, I wouldn't. But in terms of machine identities on the internet, it's safe to say we're talking, not to go call Sagan, but billions and billions.
Billions and billions, yeah. North of 50 billion now.
50, my God. And so, this is huge. And I don't think it gets... We're so concerned with IAM and personal identities,
right?
Human identity, as you call it. People take notice of this. This is important. This is really important, right? Because on the internet, no one knows you're a machine, right? And to paraphrase an old saying, and it could be used for fraud just as easily as the human identity can be, and for
every attack chain in some way involves this, because it's the best way to stay persistent in a network, impersonate something that is supposed to
Always
be
there.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'm sorry to derail you there, Jeff. Let's jump on. So that's the Venafi story. What have you guys done?
So we created this category. As category leaders, our responsibility to make sure the ecosystem grows. So we started, and you and I talked about this, something about 2 years ago called the Machine Identity Protection Development Fund, where we set aside $12.5 million and we invest in companies and we pay companies to build connectors into the Venafi platform. And it's been really, really successful. So we have over 1,000 integrations now, which customers love, because it's not only today's stuff, it's the future stuff. We have tons of partners that are building now connectors into the Venafi system. So out of the Machine Identity Protection Development Fund, we met a company called JetStack. And what JetStack did, they were early visionaries and innovators like we are. And what they saw was in the Kubernetes world, all these machines that are getting spun up, containers and virtual machines and everything, in pods and with nodes, they all have to have machine identities, or certificates in this case. And so it's a pain. It's hard. Developers spend a lot of time screwing around with it. So JetStack came up with something called Cert Manager that was very easy, and they get about 1 million downloads a day now, and just about every Kubernetes world a day. Every Kubernetes installation now pretty much uses the JetStack Cert Manager to handle all the things you have to do to keep track of machine identities in Kubernetes clusters. So we ran into them, and we built they built a connector into the Venafi platform. We started doing seminars together. We started working on customers together, and it became obvious that these two companies really needed to be together, because so many of the machines in the world now are being created in DevOps and run in clouds as cloud workloads. So we agreed for them to join us. We acquired them. We announced it. It closes at the end of this month. And it's just like the culture fits great. We love open source. We're going to completely support open source. Open source is where the developers go. The world today is being built by developers. We want to give them everything they need, fast and easy, to protect these things as they build their environments, the new applications that digitally transform. And JetStack and Venafi together will do that.
That's fantastic and really good news. And and it just some things. So beforehand you don't see it, right? But then when it happens, you say, "Why didn't I see that?" Right? It was obvious, right? And
my life's been full of that kind of stuff, and
I know. That's why we're both still working instead of out taking pictures in the middle of the night in London or whatever, or Hawaii or somewhere else exotic. But and we all do. But it is such an obvious thing. But the other thing about it, Jeff, kudos to you and the Venafi team is, you mentioned the cloud native world, and back in the days when we used to get on planes and go places. I traveled the world going to conferences, right? Literally traveled the world going to conferences. And without a doubt, the biggest enthusiasm, buzz, the most vibrant community that I ran into is that cloud native world, right? Which, and make no mistake, we use cloud native, it's Linux Foundation, it's CNCF, but really what it is, it's the open source.
That drives that whole CNCF.
That's the foundation of everything in the cloud.
Absolutely.
It starts there.
And I mean, the size of it, you talk about 50 billions and we were kidding around billions and billions. But when you start thinking that every Kubernetes install needs a cert, every container, right, has its own unique address, needs a cert. The numbers are staggering. We're going to start putting T's in front instead of B's on those things. And so a solution that scales to that scale is, man, that's amazing, right? And in order for it to be successful in that community, though, it has to be open source by definition. And it goes, Jeff, to something that I call the democratization of IT, which is you get these open source tools into the hands of developers. You deliver delight. You fulfill the mission, and then they will move up the food chain with you to enterprise class functionality, and companies make money. Where 10 years ago, Jeff, if I would have said, well, Jeff, what do you think about open source? Look, we support open source, but the only company really making money 10 years ago in open source was Red Hat.
Maybe 10 years
and
ago.
Maybe. Right.
Today, it's clear, right? But what's happened is, what's happened is, and this is just shines a light directly on it. Some people don't like to hear this, but open source is where the devs live. It's where they get the stuff that they're going to build things from. They get it from Git, and it's open, and they can see everything. They've got the community behind it and all that stuff. So they just download it. It's for free. And then they use it. But at some point, they're going to say, you know what? And we see it all the time. They say, look, now I got all this, and there's glue, and there's all this other stuff, and I need it to be kind of enterprise robust, and I need to have these 3 or 4 things, and I don't have the time to build it, and I don't want to, unless I'm Google, which I put 100 people on it, but most can't. And so they say, hey, is there anybody that's done anything that helps make this kind of like enterprise consumable and supportable? And so that's where I think, those are the people that pay for it. So the devs use it, they don't pay for it, and then the enterprise pays for it.
Yeah, I did a presentation on this at our Predict event in late January called The Builder Shall Inherit the Earth, the democratization of IT. When I was founding venture-backed companies, I paid a fortune to, enterprise salespeople, Jeff, right, who were on the road taking people like you and I out to lunch or dinner, and long sales cycles of selling big enterprise class solutions. Those days are gone. Today, you don't hire salespeople, right? You hire DevRel people. You hire evangelists who go out in the community and help these developers you got to get the software in their hands.
That's
so you got to remove every barrier to getting the software in their hands.
Frictionless, fast, easy.
Yep. And then you got to deliver delight. The software has to do the work. At that point, it's not even the dev. At some point, the manager says, or the manager's manager says, what do you guys use for this? They say, oh, we're using we're using Venafi, or we're using JetStack. And the manager says, that's great, but we really need a support contract. We really need enterprise scalability. We really need, these other features, because they don't care as much what Gartner says as they used to, or Forrester, or any of these.
It's what their people are using, right?
Because they're paying those people a fortune. Right, these aren't minimum wage $15 an hour kind of people. These are people they're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and the only reason they're working there is because they have freedom to pick the tools they want to use.
So I have a deep history in the predecessor to open source, which was Unix. That was the first foundation. So I was banging around in the West Coast big research universities when Unix was just taking over. And I saw that, and I'm going to age myself, so Digital Equipment Corporation at the time, and I urged DEC to buy Unix. And it was for sale because AT&T had to get out of the business.
Yeah.
And DEC decided to pass it up for VMS. And
I remember.
Just like,
not that I'm that old, Jeff.
Yeah, no, yeah, you are, Alan.
But,
you are that old.
Yeah,
it's
but
okay.
I remember.
And just, for our younger viewers out there, what happened was a travesty, because then what happened is what we call the balkanization of Unix, right? Where every vendor, it seemed, had their own flavor of Unix, but they were incompatible with each other to a large degree. Some things worked across, but a lot of it was incompatible. So then when something like Linux comes along, right, that was the big success story of how Linux replaced Unix. Right,
all the different flavors of Unix, or
all the different flavors.
Yeah, and then there was an open foundation, OSF, if you remember that, which was all these proprietary companies that wanted to work together, but they never did for all kinds of reasons. And then there was Linux, and then there was that release, and then that started really open source.
And that
roots back in Unix,
and it was absolutely
at the university when people would buy DEC VAXs and run BSD 4.2, which was Unix, release on it. And they didn't have to pay for it, because if you're in the university, you got it for free. And so that was open source. So that was when I was a kid. I was banging around in that and helping develop that community. So I had this like deep in my soul, and I always believed in it.
What's old is new, my friend. Right? I mean, if you wait long enough,
you think it goes in circles, but it doesn't, Alan. If you look at the top, it's a circle, but on the side, it's a spiral up.
So it's a spiral, exactly. But here's the other thing, though. It is a spiral up. I don't think, though, that this particular model goes away anytime soon either. This is unless we get to a point where software is written entirely by machines, which could happen in our lifetime still too.
A lot of people working on that. Like every developer is trying to put themselves out of business.
They'll still be developers. You know what? We've heard this before too. But anyway, back on topic, Jeff. This is a tremendous acquisition for you guys. What needs to be done in terms of the integration?
So it really is the best of both worlds. We have done phenomenally well, Venafi has, at securing machine identities for the world's largest organizations. And that's mostly been in data centers. And then about 3 years ago, we started to get pulled into the workloads that were being run in AWS and Azure. So we've got a lot of history in working with that. And then when we saw JetStack came along, said, this really makes sense. We partnered with them, and we have now joined forces. And the thing is that across 400, 500, 600 customers, what you can see is you can see patterns, and you can see how to make things better. And so with JetStack now, we've just got so many more sensors out there that are giving us information. How do we make the developer's job easier? How do we make it faster? For InfoSec, how do we make it more secure so that they're not out there wondering what the hell's going on in my cloud worlds and my DevOps? They're not slowing anybody down, but they're getting visibility. The new word's observability. There's observability built in, so they get what they need. So it's the best of both worlds. It's InfoSec and it's Dev, and they were in tension like this. They were really at tension, And I got this graphic image of a steel cable breaking under tension, right? And
Yeah.
what we have done is we've lashed these two together so they're pulling in the same direction. The best of both worlds. Secure digital transformation, faster than easier and more friction-free than ever.
Fantastic, man. I love it. What I'm excuse my senior moment. JetStack, right?
Yeah, JetStack.
Is it going to remain JetStack? Does it become Venafi JetStack? Is the product any plans on
It's
that?
it's JetStack, and they do their thing. They're out there, they're capturing devs. They've got a huge following in open source, couple hundred contributors. We're going to just fuel that fire and keep it going. And there's no reason to collapse it. And I've done a lot of acquisitions in my life, and what I think is really the most important is that you keep the team together. And then you let them do their own thing, because most companies, when they acquire, they smother love something, right? And so what I've told the team, and I've told JetStack too, is look, you guys have your objectives, JetStack, go do it, and if you need help, ask. And I told our team, you can't go to them and tell them you got to do anything. You can go to them and say, how can I help you meet your objectives?
Exactly.
And that's Satya did that with Git at Microsoft. And that is a really good model in a world where there's a lot of diversity, and it's not about control. It's about transparency and openness and doing really good things. And then the world's your oyster.
Man, couldn't have said it better myself. Jeff, I was part of a company back in the .com days. We did a roll-up. We're what they call an ASP, application service provider. We did about 30 acquisitions in 36 months. But the CEO, actually he was chairman of our company, he's probably 80-something years old now, this gentleman, Len Fassler. Len had done 3 or 4 big roll-ups in his lifetime. Biggest one became GE Information Systems, Ameridata. And he had a real philosophy with acquisitions. Nothing changes for you want to break an acquisition, go right in and start trying to take it over. You got to leave people right in there for 6 to 9 months, right? Let them find their place in line. Let them find themselves, right? You give them resources that maybe they were starved for before, right? But you let them be, and you mentioned Satya and the GitHub folks. Look now, it's about a year and a half post, maybe 2 now for GitHub. In the last 3-4 months, I'm sure you follow too. They've had a ton of announcements. They're going after that whole CI/CD pipeline. They're not going to be just a repository, because now I think you're really starting to see Microsoft empowering them, but on their own terms, not that thumb down kind of thing, right? So good for you guys. I just wanted to also quickly mention we had the pleasure of doing a virtual event with Venafi last week. It was an internally focused event for Venafi customers. Feedback we got from attendees was just amazing around the content and everything. For those who weren't lucky enough, or maybe they want to be Venafi customers so they could come to the next one, can you give them a little bit of just a little insight into what it was about? And
sure, we had so last year we had our very first worldwide global machine identity protection summit. Some people would call it like Dreamforce or something. That's what Salesforce. This is ours,
yeah.
Right? And last year we had like very first one. We had 100 customers, and then this year we thought, well, shoot, we can't do it live, and we figured this out like 2 months ago when we all did, and so we got in contact with you and in your organization, and we said, let's do it virtually. So we did, and we blew away attendance records. We had, and this was just pure customer people, 900 right. people, 900,
wow.
From 100 to 900. Now, is it because it's virtual? Part of it. Is it because this is a really big topic, important topic? Yes, that really plays into it. And it was just phenomenal, because the other thing, and this about live versus replay. right? So you do these things virtually, and how many people are live versus replay? And our numbers live were like 50% stayed live throughout the whole thing. And the peak you saw before this was like 37%. And so that gets to the content. And that's, people got engrossed, and we spent a lot of time. We had customers speaking, we had partners speaking. We had really compelling content, how to do a better job at this time, right now, how to do a better job protecting your organization and helping them go faster. And we just got amazingly great feedback. It was also a great forum to announce the acquisition. Right. And every one of the everybody that was tuned in got an offer from JetStack to go to one of their workshops, which is a Kubernetes workshop. And it was, and God, hundreds of people signed up for it. It was amazing. They've never seen anything like this. So it was phenomenal. And it was all because we got this great mission, which is to speed up and secure digital transformation. And there's only one thing, Alan, that's going to blow up digital transformation. It's not 5G or Moore's Law or storage density on SSDs. It's, can we secure this or not? Yep. It's the only thing that could really get in the way. And boy, the bad guys are coming after it like crazy. We all got to work hard.
I mean, Jeff, I'll tell you, our Security Boulevard site during this whole COVID thing in the last 2-3 months, where we see all these companies starting to shift now more than ever, we went from 330,000 uniques a month to 600,000 because security truly is on top of people's minds here. Just quickly on the virtual event, it is, I told you this before we got on air, there is no substitute for great content, right? And I think that was the reason you had the results you did. But for people watching this who maybe are a Venafi customer but didn't get a chance to go, or want to find out more about this whole topic, if I'm not mistaken, the virtual event, it's not live, so you don't have the live chats and all that, but a lot of the content material is still up. Is that correct? You wouldn't know the URL, would you?
Just go to Venafi.com and it'll take you right there. So cool. Venafi.com, and you'll get the ability to get in and see and replay what happened at the Worldwide Machine Identity Protection Global Summit. It was really good. It's worth it. And I mean, it's like, you can't find this anywhere else. You really can't. There's no other company in the world that's really doing what we're doing the way we are. And so that's why it's such good and important content. The only piece we couldn't record and play back was the keynote speech from the Gartner analyst, David Motti, who spoke at the conference. But Gartner has...
There's rules around that stuff. Yes, there are. But be that as it may. Hey, Jeff, we blew past 20 minutes like 10 minutes ago. So I apologize. This went a little long. But that being said, hey, man, first of all, I hope that we can all go travel and you can take more beautiful pictures soon.
Thank you.
Because this is real art.
I hope we can get out of this situation where everybody's sheltered in place. And I hope that we can do it safely. And for anybody that's listening, thank you all for what you do. You are the first responders. Making the world safe in the virtual world is it's more important than ever before. When the physical world falls apart, we're running on the backup system. That's the virtual world. We got to secure it. Thank you for what you do.
You got it.
Thank you for your part, Alan.
Thank you, Jeff. Hey, good luck with JetStack. Good luck to the JetStack team and the rest of Venafi. Jeff Hudson, CEO of Venafi, acquirer of JetStack, here on TechStrong TV. This is Alan Schimmel. We're going to be right back with our next guest.
Tech is strong. We may be working from home, but tech goes on. Tech will continue to collaborate. Tech will continue to communicate. Tech is strong. Join us for TechStrong Con, June 4th, 12 hours strong, TechStrong. Featuring John Bacha-Galupe Willis, Shannon Leitz, William Hurley, Jasmine James, Kat Swatell, Cornelia Davis, James Wickett, Courtney Kistler, Damon Edwards. Live Q&A with speakers, exhibit halls, and more. free, but register before spots fill at techstrongcon.com.
Okay, our next guests for today's show are Anir Mazur of SNCC and Justin Graham of Docker. SNCC and Docker just announced a partnership where Docker customers now have the benefit of integrating SNCC security scans into their Docker payloads. So I think it sounds great. It's also the first step of what I think is both sides are planning to be a very deep strategic partnership. So let's go to Anir Mazur and Justin Graham.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for this segment. Our two guests on TechStrong TV right now are Anir Mazur and Justin Graham. I'm going to let them both introduce themselves. Gentlemen, welcome to TechStrong TV. Justin, why don't you go first?
Hello, folks. Justin Graham. I'm Vice President of Products at Docker, and I live in Seattle, Washington, where it's not quite nice and sunny. I've been at the company a little over a year.
Excellent. Anir, how about you?
Yeah, I'm Anir Mazur, Chief Product Officer at SNCC, and here with my family pictures behind me, so you get a little taste of that.
Excellent. It's always good to, everybody brings their own from this working from home Zoom thing. We see a lot of interesting backgrounds, so excellent. Justin, not to rub it in, but I'm here in South Florida where it is very sunny and warm, and we're having the greatest day. That being said, guys, SNCC and Docker recently made an announcement. As we were talking off camera, SNCC has made several announcements over the last couple of weeks, and we're also seeing an increased kind of spotlight on cybersecurity, secure code development, secure code deployment. Which one of you want to give us the high level? What is this announcement and partnership about?
Sure. I'll jump in and give that high level. So yesterday, SNCC and Docker announced that we're working together to provide developers sort of in-developer workflow, CVE identification, image vulnerability scanning across Docker Desktop and Docker Hub, and with the whole goal of making it as easy as possible for developers within their workflow to understand where vulnerabilities may be, identify them, and then get the help they need to remediate them as quickly as possible. Excellent.
And Anir, before we dive in, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's this one is just very exciting because it means that as security is a growing concern for developers, and many of the containers out there are vulnerable, being able to tap into this a large and broad Docker community and empower developers to easily own security within their workflows is just a great opportunity that hopefully many of them will now choose to opt into, and make sure that they're developing more secure containers.
And more secure code in the containers. The containers themselves are pretty secure, thank goodness. But Justin, I'm interested. What motivates Docker on this, right? What's the what's pushing you guys saying, hey, this is a smart thing to do?
Really good question. Right now, Docker is very much focused on helping developers accelerate what we call the code to cloud middle. Getting your source code from your SCM into your production, packaged and through a pipeline and into your production runtime as fast as possible, and then funding that loop back to the next iteration. And one of the most requested features on our public roadmap on GitHub was image vulnerability scanning, as there are over 3.3 million images on Docker Hub that are publicly available, and many users use those images and those layers as parts of their own work that they're doing. So they really wanted to know and understand that images that they're pulling are secure, and that those vulnerabilities are identified, and then even within the ones that they're building themselves, also want to understand before they push them into a repo. Are there any vulnerabilities that are even existing in the things that they're building in real time before they push those? So for us, it's really about developer experience and bringing that the experience of security into their workflow where they are within the Docker CLI and Docker Desktop. And then as they expand more and share those things out with the world on Docker Hub.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Anira, let's look at it from the SNCC point. I mean, one of the great things that I think SNCC has done, frankly, is taken the security conundrum, right? Which is security's hard for most people. And if you're not a security person, you don't always understand, what are the finer points of a CVE being marked critical versus medium or what have you. But SNCC's done a good job of translating that to developer speak, right? Making it accessible and understandable to developers. Can you talk to us about what the motivation there is for you guys working here with Docker?
Yeah, and exactly like you described it, it's sometimes you'd find your app within a container and you'd run some scanning tool and you'd get a list of 80 CVE numbers and on some binaries, and now what? Right? And the reality is it just developers are just looking at this as something that is counterproductive to their development work and wasting their time, and very hard for them to actually achieve success in minimizing their security exposure. SNCC is focused very strongly on making sure that the outcomes of the vulnerability scanning are actionable. So a lot of our focus is how do we get not the security person to start triaging issues, but how do we get the developer to understand what actions they need to take in order to get to be more secure? And that has been our focus from day one, focusing on empowering the developer to fix things. I'll give you like a small example or a simple example, being able to understand that out of your 100 vulnerabilities, 50 of them come from your base image, and that base image has a minor upgrade that will solve 10 of those 50, a major upgrade that you could do that will solve another 30, or you can even go to a different alternative distribution that will remove all of them, and it kind of empowers you to take those decisions. And with this partnership, obviously we've seen a lot of success within the developer community. The partnership with Docker is very exciting for us because it enables us to reach this large community of millions of developers that Docker reaches, and help them understand that when they download one of those images to use them as a base image, or when they add more layers into those Docker images, what vulnerabilities exist there and what actions they could do in order to fix them. So this, providing this easy way to improve your security exposure and getting the access with Docker to the community is what's very exciting for us here.
Fair. Excellent. So guys, I spent a good chunk of my career in startup world as a VP of Biz Dev. I did a lot of partnerships. And we could do press releases, we could announce partnerships, but at some point rubber meets the road, right? Or it has to meet the road if you're going to have a successful, especially a technology partnership like this. How are you, Justin? Basically it's Docker offering sort of a SNCC security offering into your Docker customer base, into your Docker users. So how's Docker gonna present this? How do you get your users to say, hey, this is available right here, use this?
Good question. So we're doing two things in partnership with SNCC in terms of product availability. The first is on Docker Desktop. So users of Docker Desktop will be able to download and install Docker Desktop, and as part of that, be able to manually execute scans of their images through the Docker CLI, and then have the results of that scan and the analysis of those scan results presented to them within Docker Desktop.
That's great.
So that the use case is, hey, I'm a developer. I've written my code. I've used Docker to package that, and then I want to run an inner loop test on a local Kubernetes cluster, but I want to see if there's any vulnerabilities in my image or my layers before I do that. I can just quickly execute a scan command. Snyk will scan that, analyze those results, and then tell me if there's any vulnerabilities identified in my package, right? And then I can take the actions necessary to remediate. Then if at the next point, okay, great. Now I want to push my image to a public repository on Docker Hub, and then make that image available to other developers on my team, customers, or maybe it's an open source project and I want to make it available to the world. Well, I also want to prove to those customers or anyone that might pull my image that that my image is free of vulnerabilities, or if there are some, then what are they? And then from that perspective, there will be scanning available on repositories in Docker Hub as well. That will continually, that will regularly scan and make sure that those vulnerabilities are identified, and then the owners of those images are notified of such.
That's a really nice integration, guys. That sounds good. And of course now, right, from Docker's point of view, it gives you guys a not you. It gives the Docker's users something that they can't. I mean, that tight integration, having it built right into the CLI, having it built right into the point of deployment, is something that anyone could use. Snyk, of course, but that integration of it is really well done. Is there? I should ask. Is that available now with the announcement, or this is coming?
It's coming by the end of July. So you'll start to see some of these things rolling out between now and then. And we, for our users, we have 2.2 million installations of Docker Desktop in a month that's active. We have 6.5 million Docker IDs. To us, like presenting this type of best of breed vulnerability solution and scanning solution in terms of Snyk to that level of developer base is really an industry-wide win for everybody, right? So we wanted to really make sure that we weren't just checking a box on image vulnerability scanning and saying, okay, like we've got it, something that does this, like move on to the next problem. We wanted, this is really important because of the blast radius of what Docker does and how it affects the developer community. So we're really excited that Snyk's partnering with us on this to provide a best of breed solution here.
It really is. It really is. Anir, is there an addition? I know Snyk has some like open source, open core stuff. What's pricing like on this?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. To be determined. We'll as the features roll out, we'll provide more details on how this is priced and how users can access it from the Docker perspective.
Yep.
Excellent.
But it's very important to say that the CLI bit getting the initial access is free and broad. So it's just limited with some usage, but the basic scanning, you have an image, you want to scan it, it'll be available for you to play around with it for start.
Yeah, it's a really good point, actually. I think one of the things that we immediately sort of both Snyk and Docker really aligned on and we're excited about is we both have the same philosophy, a freemium philosophy, right? Like the goodness of the tech should be available at some level for free to the community, right? And there was about a 10-second alignment conversation on that in the very first meeting that we had. So that was quick and easy, and then the rest of it was just figuring out more detail. But that's a great alignment between our two companies.
Yeah, no, it is, and it goes. I call this the democratization of IT, right? Where the important thing is you got to get the tools in the developers' hands, right, and deliver delight to them, right, quality, and then it almost becomes, I don't want to say the selling takes care of itself, but if you deliver delight with tools you've delivered to these developers, the financial considerations can be dealt with and worked out. But it's first getting people to say, hey, this is quality. I want to use this. So, guys, and it does my heart good to see security, again, moving into the development life cycle so much earlier than, when I was doing security, 8-9 years ago. 10 years ago, for the last 20 years, right, where it was always post-deployment. We didn't do scans till it was out there. Guys, I'm wondering now, so it's in the Docker repo. It's if you're using Docker Desktop to develop your code in there. Something, Anura, you said early on about, container security. The Docker containers themselves, right? If you will, that's part of Linux Foundation, right? Container D and what have you. We're really talking about the payloads in here, right? And that's the code that we're scanning, and that's what we're looking for vulnerabilities in.
Right. It's the operating system you're using, the middleware you're using, the app you're using. So we'll be scanning all of that and providing you the actionable recommendations on what you should be switching to in order to be more secure. Excellent.
Let me ask you, this announcement came out, I'm going to say 2 or 3 days ago. I probably saw the announcement. Any kind of feedback from the Docker base yet of folks?
Yeah, feedback has been extremely positive, and I think that the best is everyone sort of chomping at the bits, like, when can I get my hands on it? When can I get my hands on it? So that puts the right forward pressure on us to move quickly. But I think there's been a lot of surprise delight, I'll call it, in that I think many folks maybe expected Docker would release an image vulnerability scanning feature. It's been on our public roadmap for a couple of months, but I think nobody expected this partnership to kind of come together to do it and to raise the bar on exactly how we do it. And we at Docker, a lot of our brand and our promises is an unbelievable developer experience, right? So for us, the bar is higher.
Right. No, this is the best of breed. To make it clear, are you still working on an internal solution? Or if you're allowed to talk, I don't want to have you say anything out of school.
Oh no, this is the feature.
This is the solution.
There's no this isn't a paper partnership. This isn't a a bunch of marketing with nothing behind it. Like we are working on one image vulnerability scanning feature.
And you got it.
And
this is what it is, right?
Fantastic, man. That's good news. Really good news. I'm thrilled to hear it.
Yeah, maybe just to add, the way we're treating this is a long-term partnership. So this is kind of not a quick bang and something small. We're prioritizing this. We're all people folks, as product folks, as you see here. So development is what we do, and we're looking at this as a long-term partnership. So definitely evolving, getting feedback from the community on the offering, hearing what folks are recommending us to improve, to add to it. So we're kind of taking really a strategic decision with this partnership to being committed to this community.
So you're both saying that. Then I guess it kind of begs the issue of, all right, so we've kind of announced the CLI integration. We have scanning when you put it into the repo. Where else do you see potential integration points, features? Round 2, phase 2, phase 3, going forward here.
Yeah. So from our perspective, I'm actually going to throw that back out to everyone listening to this TV
Excellent.
podcast.
Good work, Justin.
Google Docker roadmap, and tell us what you'd like to see, and how you'd like to see it, and where, in which of those gaps you'd like to fill. I think there's lots of possibilities that I think we've batted around, but we're going to work backwards from the customer here, and build the next things that our customers are telling us.
Fantastic. Anir, how about you, man? Anything you'd like to see coming forward?
No, I mean, really, it's about, we're also an agile shop, so it's about iterations, right? And I think the first two that we said are around that CLI, that dedicated CLI and integration, and the one with Hub, and we want to see how we continue from there. There's a few ideas of how we even automate more fixing, kind of do things that we're even proactively pushing to you the actions and suggestions you should be doing. And trust me, there's dozens of ideas around it, but we really want to launch these two, and see how what kind of feedback we're getting to iterate on them.
This is why this is a long-term partnership, right? To Anir's earlier point, right? I mean, we like, it was never on the table like, okay, hey, we're going to sign this thing, we're going to launch one thing, and then we're all going to hug each other.
It wasn't a hit and run.
And sort of go to
Barney thing.
We wanted to have that long-term ability to do many iterations and continually add to this to provide value.
Fantastic. Guys, I told you the 20 minutes goes fast. We're over. I apologize. But Anur Mazura, Justin Graham, Docker, Anur with SNCC, thanks for being our guest on TechStrong TV. Congratulations on this partnership. I do think this is one that has legs, and we'll be looking forward to see, A, the adoption from the user base, and 2, where else this goes, right? It's always good to bring more security into the development life cycle. Thanks, gentlemen. Be well and be safe.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Stay safe.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right, Alan Schimmel, TechStrong TV. We'll be right back with our next guest.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more. ContainerJournal.com is operated by MediaOps Inc., the team behind DevOps.com, Digital Anarchist, SecurityBoulevard.com, DevOps Connect, and DevOpsDozen.com.
For our next segment, as I mentioned in the top of the show, we're going to go something old today. And out of the archives, I pulled an interview that Charlene O'Hanlon, our managing editor, did at RSA conference this year with Jim Rivas, CEO and co-founder of the Cloud Security Alliance. Jim's always a great person to talk to. Has his finger on the pulse of what's going on in the cloud security space. And I think you'll enjoy this video. So let's now go to Charlene O'Hanlon and Jim Rivas from RSA Conference 2020.
This is Digital Anarchist at RSA San Francisco 2020.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, Managing Editor at MediaOps, which produces DevOps.com, Container Journal, Security Boulevard, and the Digital Anarchist media platform. We are at RSA 2020, day 2, having some really great conversations, and I'm really excited about this next conversation here with Jim Rivas, who is CEO of the Cloud Security Alliance. Jim, thanks so much for taking the time.
Oh, it's quite a pleasure to be here. Isn't this just great weather?
I can't believe this. I've been telling people left and right, this is not San Francisco. This is a reasonable facsimile, but it is not San Francisco weather-wise.
I think it portends well to the future of cybersecurity in 2020. I think it's somewhat related to the groundhog. So great security.
I like the way you think.
Yeah.
Great. Well, you guys just came off a conference, right?
Yeah, so we did our 11th CSA Summit on the Monday. It's become quite the tradition at RSA conference, and we always try to top it, but I think that we actually, from what we've heard, that I think that the content was better than we've had in years past, and it was just awesome to reconnect with a lot of people. But we had people from the Chief Risk Officer at Goldman Sachs. We had Dan Gear, who is really should be on the Mount Rushmore of cybersecurity. We had Shannon Leitz, who she's really done more than anyone to evangelize DevSecOps. I know she's been involved with a lot of your conferences and media. And we had the general counsel, former general counsel of the National Security Agency, that had some pretty profound things. So there's definitely a lot on my mind to talk about in terms of sort of the state of cloud security and broader cybersecurity issues that we learned out of that.
Well, I would love to hear what you have to say. I mean, because I'm always interested in knowing about some of the trends that are happening, and especially as it pertains to cloud security, because that's the cloud security is. You've got hybrid cloud, you've got multi-cloud, you've got single private cloud.
Yep.
It's not just a vanilla type security these days. So.
It's kind of complex, and when I was thinking about founding CSA in 2008, and then we actually formally launched in 2009, I actually had sort of the naive view that in 5 years we were going to be all in, and it's really has, for a lot of good reasons, it has been a more complex journey. And so when we had Phil Venables at Goldman Sachs Chief Risk Officer talking about this in the profession, some of the things we heard from him and from a couple other speakers are that, so cloud now is the dominant information technology system. There's been analyst reports that say that's where the action is,
right.
That's where the majority of the spend now has trended. And we see that if you take a really good approach at managing risks and really diving into the technology versus saying, hey, it's all business, that we're finding that large enterprises are getting very comfortable with developing applications in the infrastructure as a service level. So you pick the big cloud providers, they do a pretty good job with it, and we're learning with the DevOps and shifting left, right, and embedding security, we're doing pretty good. The big pain point in mystery is still software as a service, SaaS, and the separate organization and somewhat of the transparency issues we have and being able to understand that. And so I think that is certainly something from our perspective. We have a cloud audit initiative we're working on in 2020 to create more tools for SaaS organizations to show that they're secure, to be able to educate on the shared responsibility model between organizations that are looking to procure that, and then making sure that the auditors have a really good skill set around this. So it's something we're seeing quite a lot of. We had a chief security officer, I think, make some really interesting insights in one of our panels about how the whole audit assurance needs to change in cloud, in that he was saying, if I do a business continuity disaster recovery plan, I have to test it. And how do I do that in cloud? I can move from one data center to another, DC East to DC West, but I can't simulate, if that fails, a million other customers going to it.
Right.
And so it's an example of how we actually need to change the conversation with audit assurance, because it can be more secure if we sort of redefine the terms and define what security is, define what risk management is, define resiliency better, and all these topics.
So two things that you just said kind of piqued my interest. One is the topic of the shared responsibility model. That's something that we've been talking a little bit more often about on Security Boulevard is this, the idea that, it's security is everybody's problem and everybody's responsibility. But I don't think there's been enough education out in the industry that organizations really truly understand what it is that they are responsible for in the cloud.
That's right. I agree. So people get it philosophically. Yes, we all have this responsibility, but we have to peel the layers of the onion, as it were. So our cloud controls matrix, which is sort of the industry standard for defining security controls for cloud, this is something we're going through a major update, and we announced that at the summit. We're doing a major update in 2020. But what you have to do is you have to drill down and say, okay, it's all cloud applications are a mashup of an infrastructure provider, and maybe you've got some API tools that come from another service, and then you've got to build your application, and you've got to look at those different layers. Is it network impacting? Is it are you responsible for physical data center? All these sorts of things. And so we've tried to map that and actually say specifically, control by control, what is a cloud provider responsibility? What is the tenant responsibility? What is the end customer responsibility? What is that SaaS provider? So it's something that we hope to embed into the educational program we are doing for our new cloud audit initiative and a certificate of cloud auditing knowledge. So it's all about continuing sort of going all forms of communication, evangelizing this a lot of different ways, but having like real granular information that explains those differences and the nuances of shared responsibility in cloud.
Do you think that that's going to help? I mean, no offense, but people tend to gloss over certain things like security and responsibility and things like that when they're in a rush to do something. So organizations, do you think they're going to pay attention to it?
Well, we don't want to solve all the problems too quickly because we enjoy coming to San Francisco and having the RSA conference.
Good point. All right.
But it takes time. But I will say this: a separate conference I was at the Federal Reserve 2 weeks ago, and I had the great pleasure of being on a panel with some chief security officers in financial services, and they said, and they're talking about infrastructure and building their own cloud applications. They've said they can quantify that you think in terms of this full basket of risks with on-premise and cloud and everything else, and that the basket of risk seems to be less now, and it is because of not just what we're doing, but other people are doing. So yeah, I do feel like we are going to, if this is another thing that Phil Venables said, we got to be long-term optimists as we are short-term pessimists in our industry. And so in the long term, I'm optimistic about that.
Okay. All right. So the other thing that you brought up was the idea that you as a cloud provider could kind of switch, or you as a cloud provider customer could switch nodes there, but your customers are not maybe possibly going to do that. So how do we, in the event of an emergency or disaster recovery or something? So how do organizations kind of grapple with this, working in a multi-cloud environment when it comes to maybe disaster recovery or backup or anything like that, and servicing their clients? Because I keep hearing that it's so much more complex to navigate a multi-cloud environment, especially when it comes to issues such as security and compliance and things of that nature. So are you hearing in the industry at all that there is this, that companies are being stymied by this complexity?
The complexity is certainly an issue, and there are, based on the size of the company and the choices you make, you can make it less complex. But if we think in terms of a large enterprise, it's probably going to be fairly complex, and the architecture to do that and to do it right, it's a lot of work, but it gives the organization a great deal of agility. So some like specifically of what we talk about are the issues for multi-cloud is that the way capitalism works is these big cloud providers are doing a lot of great innovation that tends to be proprietary and does create that lock-in. And so organizations need to understand that when you make an investment in one of these large cloud providers, that you need to really document, because you are probably going to use a lot of the proprietary and very wonderful services. Understand which of those are and try to be able to document and understand, hey, if I were going to need to go to some of these these other cloud providers that I have a path. It's not an instant failover thing, but it's a migration thing. I find that in regulated industries, a lot of cloud providers are being told, and they think it's a good idea to have strong competency with multiple cloud providers, like maybe have some of their apps in one or the other, and then they sort of understand how these things can move. But it's panacea to say that you build a cloud and you have a layer of abstraction and you can move workloads between them. You can move them between your own on-premise, your private cloud, and the public cloud. So the thing we've learned is these very large cloud providers are very resilient, and we've even had some people that done some studies and say, well, if Amazon in its totality were to go down, we probably have actually bigger problems in our economy than just AWS.
Yeah, exactly.
But the closing keynote, Dan Giriowitz, it's like a personal hero of mine. He did say, and it's something we're hearing more and more, is now the time to really ask that question: should major cloud providers be specifically designated as critical infrastructure by the U.S. government? And I'm not taking a position on that. I definitely think we can probably, for now, look at them through the lens of the critical infrastructure like financial services that use it, but that's definitely something that's on the table, I think, to be thinking about.
Or even consider it a utility or something like that. So
exactly,
that's probably a whole different can of worms we don't want to get into. So what about automation? What are you hearing in that space as when we're talking about either cloud security or cloud governance or anything like that? Is automation playing a bigger role in the conversation?
It absolutely is. It's a big deal, and we've heard from the one of the disadvantages of some of the early adopters in cloud is they had to build a lot of this themselves. And what we're hearing now is there's actually a pretty decent ecosystem of either some new services that the major cloud providers have done, and you can walk around on RSA and you can see a lot of companies, emerging growth companies, and some of the security incumbents that have developed some pretty good tools for orchestration, for hardening the containers, for being able to sort of find the vulnerabilities and patch them in a more automated way. So the cloud is really, it's not about data centralization as much as it's this rules for orchestration. And so it's a big priority. It's sort of a grab bag of enterprises build some of their own, cloud providers build some of their own, and I think ultimately the lessons learned out of that are going to lead to a really strong cloud security automation segment within the industry, which is kind of emerging now out of the different tools, but big priority. And I am seeing like automation just like on a lot of the booths as I'm walking around. Yeah, it is a buzzword.
Totally
maybe it's the buzzword this year. I haven't heard what the buzzword is, so maybe it's it.
Well, I've been hearing a lot about DevSecOps this year. Last year we heard it, fairly often, but it seems to crop up in almost every conversation that I'm having this year. So,
that's actually one of the white papers we released. We're doing 6 pillars of DevOps, and so we're and they're fairly high level right now. Not getting into the weeds of the technology because there's different approaches, but to understand the culture around this, embedding security, different strategies for doing that. And we did that with SafeCode, who's our partner, and they've got some of the greatest like software development brains over there. So definitely check that out.
All right, great. Well, Jim, thanks so much for the conversation. Always a pleasure to talk to you, and I hope we can have this conversation again next year.
Well, thanks very much for having me.
All right, great. Guys, stick around. There's going to be lots more interviews coming up today, tomorrow on Digital Anarchist here at RSA 2020. So stick around.
Elsa, you're all over the place.
How am I supposed to do anything when she's over here just doing her own thing?
Okay, well, maybe if Dan played more than just one string, we'd all be more on the same page.
Are you out of your mind? Okay, I do the E string. That's my job.
Isn't there an easier way to do this? There has to be.
I literally just suggested something. Nobody ever listens to me, though, so...
ridiculous every time.
When your team's not on the same page, things can get weird, fast. Don't make your DevOps team live like this.
El tutto tu tempo es finito, Dan!
See? It's like we're not speaking the same language. I'm out.
GitLab is the only single application for the entire DevOps lifecycle, making sure your teams are all on the same page.
Do you know how to play the E string?
I can learn.
Okay, everyone, it's that time of the day where we do our news headline roundup here on TechStrong TV, looking at some of the headlines from Security Boulevard, DevOps.com, Container Journal. And again, not meant to be exhaustive, but a good roundup of some of the headlines there. Let's go first over to Security Boulevard, where we have DOJ, Department of Justice, for those who don't know. DOJ continues to target China's 1,000 Talents program in U.S. And, you know, this is a tough one because God knows there's a lot of Chinese nationals who come here to go attend school, partake in research. Are they here for espionage? Are they taking this information or prohibited information out of the country? I'm sure some of that happens. Are we, jumping on the let's shut China out bandwagon? It's hard to say. There's arguments on both sides of this. But check out the article and you can make your own decisions. Also up on Security Boulevard, we have enabling secure dynamic network access with SASE, S-A-C-E. Good article, and every time I see network access, I harken back to my NAC days. But check out the article. I think you'll enjoy it. Over on Container Journal, we have from our friends at Kong, which, if you're not familiar with Kong, huge open source community and following. They've introduced something called Kuma, the service mesh from Kong. And, service mesh is kind of really happening, and recommend you guys check that out. So go have a look. Also, we have Chef simplifies Windows app deployments on GKE. And the guys at Chef have really been trying to innovate and make developers' lives easier. This is another example of it. On DevOps.com, we have Data Ops and DevOps, a match made in heaven. Some say yes, some say no. Read the article and interested in what you think about that. But Data Ops is certainly something on the rise. And then from our friends at GitLab, monthly release, 180 to 200 new features every month. But this latest release had a massive update to the CI/CD platform, and you can read all about that. And speaking of new releases, our friends at CloudBees also put out a pretty big release for their SDM, Software Defined Management offering. So read both of those if you want to stay up on what's happening in the CI/CD space. That's going to do it for the news today. We're going to turn things over to Managing Editor Charlene O'Hanlon, where Charlene has a friend of ours from GitLab, John Jeremiah, out talking about the new GitLab commit event. Charlene, take it away.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everybody, welcome back to TechStrong TV. I am Charlene O'Hanlon, Managing Editor at Media Ops, and we are here now with John Jeremiah, who is the Product Marketing Manager over at GitLab. Hey John, how are you? Thanks for joining me today.
Hey Charlene, I'm happy to be with you. I'm eager to be here, and it's a great day to join you and talk about commit.
Awesome. Yes. Well, let's talk about GitLab commit, because I know things have kind of changed in the pandemic environment we live in now. Everything's gone from live to in person to virtual. So tell me about what you guys are doing with GitLab commit.
Well, last year we started running a series of user conferences. We called it Commit because it's really about bringing our community together who are contributing and committing to making GitLab a awesome single application for people solving DevOps problems. And last year we had 3 events, and we had fantastic feedback, and it was exciting. And we were eager and ready to do our physical events this year. And well, as you know, we had to adjust. And so now we're planning a virtual event. It's going to be in the end of August. August, I think 26th, we're going to all get together virtually. And at GitLab, we're virtually together all the time. We work all remote.
Right.
We've pioneered being an all remote company on Zoom. And so this is going to be a lot like us being pioneer of being remote and together at the same time. So commit will be on the 22nd. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say that's pretty cool that you guys are kind of able to bring a lot of the expertise that you already have being a virtual company into a virtual event.
It is cool. And it's one of these things that as the world pivoted to working remotely and in a distributed way, one of the things we ended up doing was we even published an ebook about how do we work the remote way. And so we call it a remote playbook. And it was really all of our best practices. We packaged it up and made it easy for people to learn, but we're applying it again. We're going to apply it as we go into the conference. And so we've designed a set of tracks that we're going to talk about where we want to teach and bring people together to share their insight about how they're using GitLab and what they're doing with GitLab. And then, together as we work on that, we want people to offer that feedback, and we want to expand this audience in the community. So I'm excited. It's going to be a fun event.
It sounds like it. And as I understand it, it's August 26th, but I understand it's a full 24-hour event.
It will be. It'll be. We're not going to do. It'll be an all-day event. So we're going to have content running all day long. Some of it will be recorded, and we'll play some back. Others, depending upon how we end up doing the exact programming of the live content, we want to make sure we can account for people in all regions. We want to make sure we're going to be able to have live content for people in different parts of the world. That's the power of virtual, and we're going to. Bring people together and share. So yeah, it'll be all day.
Great. So how was it, or how is it in the planning process now? I mean, are you guys having any, are you running into any issues or anything regarding not only the time zones, but, issues regarding, I don't know. Let's see, what would we think? Just think about regional differences in languages for one thing, but also just different, coming up with different topics and things like that would accommodate an entire universe, if you will, of DevOps.
Well, in designing the abstracts and designing the tracks that we're going to talk to, that we're going to invite people to talk about, we've really tried to cover a wide breadth of things. Everything from the tips and tricks about using GitLab. People can teach about portfolio management or value stream management, or how to manage epics and to organize work, or how to make a pipeline do amazing things and audit, and to do the session I'd like to do would be a session on how to use pipeline and automation to triage issues. I mean, there's all sorts of amazing things that people are doing with GitLab.
Sure.
Last year, we had someone talk about how they're automating their marketing processes, and they're using Git, and they're using Git to manage marketing copy in their, they've really, it's like continuous marketing almost, if you were to play off of DevOps. But,
Right. Yeah.
but we have that. We have another topic and a track about people who are driving and leading transformation to help people learn the new culture and the cultural way of working. And then we're going to do a topic and a track on cloud native, people who are moving to containers and microservices and how GitLab is helping them. Another theme that's common, we've run into this, a lot of people talking about how do we help our developers embrace security and shift security left. So we call that track DevSecOps. It's about security being an integral part of DevOps. Then we have another topic that we're going to do on contribution. We want to talk about how we believe everyone can contribute. It's about a talk and a series of talks about how can you become an open source contributor, and how can we have and encourage people and be inclusive of contributions from everywhere. There's so much talent. There's so many brilliant people that are part of the GitLab community. We want to encourage their contributions and make it easy as possible to share those stories.
Excellent.
And then the last track is one that's going to focus on remote, right? We're going to actually embrace the whole remote theme, and we're going to talk about success stories and tips and tricks that people have learned about how do you work in a remote way, like we are right now, but we're going to bring it to this virtual conference and share those best practices as well. So there's something for everyone, and there's a story for everyone to share.
Oh, Sounds like you have plenty of content that you're going to be able to easily fill up 24 hours. So, what of the tracks? I mean, obviously, other than the remote or the virtual track, are any of those tracks kind of new for GitLab to cover at a commit event, or are these kind of ongoing topics of discussion among the GitLab community?
Well, there's similar themes to what we've done in the past. We've evolved this setting a little bit in that we've added some tracks. We didn't have a DevSecOps track last time, and we've added that into the mix. We didn't really have exactly the same mix, but we've evolved it. There's similar themes in the past. We've had the tips and tricks in the past. We've had a talk about leading transformation. I think the two new things that we've really added is about all remote is the biggest new addition. And then DevSecOps is one we've added because it's just something that there's such a consistent interest in how do we build security into the lifecycle that we want to make sure we have time allocated and dedicated for it.
Excellent, excellent. So who are some of the speakers that you guys have lined up this year? Can you give away any of that information yet?
Well, we're keeping it kind of close hold. I mean, we're going to have a handful of GitLab leaders are going to be sharing their story and their vision. Sid will provide a keynote and a vision for where we're going, and it's always amazing to hear Sid tell the stories of how did GitLab start and where we're going. I know we're going to bring product leadership into the conversation to talk about the vision and the roadmap. GitLab, we're unique, right? Because our roadmap, our vision is 100% transparent. But these are opportunities that we're going to take and we're going to stand up and share the vision where we're going and encourage feedback and encourage contribution, which is, again, a radical, transparent way of working that we do at GitLab. And so we're going to bring that. So I would expect we'll see Scott Williamson, who leads our product team, who will share some of the insights as to where we're going. I'm not sure about any other speakers we're ready to announce yet. But they'll be coming soon. But really would really want to encourage and invite anybody who's got a story to tell to share the story and to contribute, because we believe, like I said, everyone can contribute.
Yeah, well, to that end, you guys have a call for papers open right now. Am I correct?
Yeah, we do. And we are still processing and reviewing submissions. We're reviewing the stories that people have. The call for papers is open, and it's going to be open until mid-June, early June. I think we're going to close the call for papers on the 5th. So there's about 2 more weeks. Or is it 3 more weeks? I don't know. I don't have a calendar in front of me.
I don't know. Every day sounds the same.
Every day feels the same. I even have a background that tells people what day of the week it is, because it's Tuesday last I checked. Exactly. They all seem to flow together. But yeah, it'll be June 5th. We're going to close our call for papers, and we'll have about 10 days to go through and process and look at how do we want to build the agendas and work it out, and the track managers will do that. And we should have the final speaker list on the 15th of July. So with then time to work with the speakers to build the content and to put the content together. It's going to be exciting. It's one of these things that these events, I think, are both they're both sometimes scary to plan because you don't know exactly how they come together. But that's what makes it exciting, because we're going to learn so many new things from new people as well. So that's why I'm eager to see the event come together.
So if this virtual event is successful, do you think you guys are going to kind of move down that route going forward, or do you guys expect that this is going to be one of those special circumstances, if you will, and the GitLab commit events will be reverted back to in-person events in the future?
Well, if I were to predict the future, my success at predicting the future is not my batting average isn't perfect at that. I think in the future we will continue to exercise the ability to be remote, to do virtual events like this. It's in our DNA. It's the way it's really built into what we think about. But there's also the magic of coming together, of being in the same space with people, and there's a different dimension to it as well. I think we'll be adding this to our toolkit as ways of working and ways of doing things. I don't think it's going to be one way or the other. I think it'll be both.
Well, that'll be interesting to see. And I'm really looking forward to hearing the different presentations that you guys have scheduled for the event. I'm sure we'll have another conversation as you guys get closer to the event, and we can maybe get a little peek under the covers, if you will. But just to recap, the event is being handled virtually August 26th. It's a 24-hour ongoing event. Where can folks go to sign up if they are interested?
Well, we have the call for papers on aboutgitlab.com with that link, and I think we also have a website with commit in front of it. I don't think I have that website right in front of me, but I'll email it to you. You can share it with your audience, and people can come and learn all about commit. Let me see if I got it. I'll give it to you really quickly live. It is at aboutgitlab.com/events/commit is where our landing page is for the event, and from there you can also go to the call for papers.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, John, thank you very much for walking me through what is sure to be a very fascinating event coming up, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Charlene, thank you for the opportunity to share. I'm excited about the event and looking forward to seeing all of you and everyone at the event. It's going to be exciting.
All right. Great. Great. Well, thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon, hopefully.
Thank you.
All right, guys, stick around. We've got lots more TechStrong TV coming up. So tune in, stick around. Thank you.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community. Digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
Okay, thanks very much, Charlene. Good hearing from my friend John Jeremiah. And GitLab commit sounds like it is off and running. Up next, it's that time of the day where we go to Mitch at the Analyst Corner. Mitchell Ashley has two good segments today, one on Embrace or Replace, and one with another ASG analyst, Mark Hornbeek, who wrote Engineering DevOps, and a video from him. So Mitchell, take it away.
As important as technology is, the role that it plays in our businesses, our software, careers, what we enjoy doing, there's something that's even more important, and that's adoption. Adoption of technology, adoption of software that we're creating, services, applications, all kinds of things, whether it be internal within an organization or customers that you're providing the service to. Without the adoption, it's an interesting hobby, a fun project, maybe a failed project, probably a failed project in most cases. Usually organizations will start out with DevOps on a few projects, get some interesting and compelling successes, maybe accelerate and have other teams start to adopt that. At some point, though, you reach this tipping point of, okay, how do we really scale this up so that the whole organization can leverage it? Now that can bring up an interesting set of discussions, because if we wanted to increase adoption, we typically run into these arguments of, well, maybe we should pick one set of tools and one way of doing things and kind of standardize, because we can be more efficient, cost effective, less training, more continuity. We aren't relying on somebody who might leave that created something that no one else knows how to fix, support, or continue on with. But that kind of goes counter to a lot of the developer culture. I mean, today developers are attracted to positions at companies by the cool stuff that they're working on, that it aligns with what they see as something they'd like to work on, whether it be a tool set, something in the cloud, an architecture, the software architecture that's being used, whatever it is that they're interested in. Now, we can't tailor every piece of software to what every individual person wants to use and do. We're not necessarily saying, we're not at all saying that that's practical to do, but also kind of clamping down with the corporate standards really will rub a lot of people the wrong way and may push some of the best talent out of the organization, or may never even get there. So there's usually a couple of decisions that come along with that. And during a recent webinar, we were talking about this very issue. And one of the challenges that I kind of recognized in my career is there is always a better piece of software, no matter what you pick. If it's a CRM system, it's an ERP application, if it's a tool set, if it's a CI/CD platform, if it's something in the cloud, there's always a good reason to use something else. And oftentimes that's turned back as a deficiency in what you're using. Well, yes, everything has deficiencies in it, and there's always a better tool that will do some other part of the job better. You can't use everything. It's not practical. So just by picking one thing that we're all going to standardize, you're kind of setting yourself up for that argument and these battles. You know, I don't bet you the religious wars about methodologies and tools and all of that kind of thing. I think it's better to look at the generations of technologies that your applications are built on, the software stack, how much they've adopted or moved into cloud native kinds of architectures with microservices and service mesh. Are they ready for that? Are they ready for a fully automated deploy dozens of times a day or even a couple times a day? Not every application is even close to that. Or the teams may not be ready for that kind of a challenge. So you're going to have to look at where your organization is, looking at clusters within the organization, because not everybody's in the same place. Some folks may be dying to give this a shot. And they'll even take on the extra hit of, will help the rest of the organization adopt some of the standards or best practices, learnings they have coming out of their projects. Because a key tenet of DevOps is sharing and sharing the learnings. Other software teams are not ready for that. They're really kind of getting that, maybe it's a mainframe app, for example. They're getting to that place where they can start to automate the CI/CD process using tools outside of the mainframe 3270 green screen, if you will, and thinking of more of an automated way of doing testing, maybe ways they haven't done before. So there's different places that you can start and different places you can have individual teams start. So consider that as you're thinking about enterprise DevOps, not as one monolith initiative. We're all going to have everybody develop or adopt DevOps and develop the same tool set and develop the same processes. But how can you leverage where individual groups and teams are at and help them move further along the process and build into the process something you do want to standardize on? It's a way of sharing the knowledge, sharing the learnings and the lessons that have happened on this journey, because it's a journey. It isn't going to happen in a year or 2 years if you're any sizable organization, that's for sure. So keep that in mind. It's more important to build that learning culture than it is to have a standard set of tools or a process that everyone must conform to, that in fact, they're just going to work around because it's not going to work for them. People do what's practical, even when there are corporate standards, because let's face it, who got fired for not following the corporate standard in software? Very rarely happens. You know, violate the law or do something like that. Sure, you'll get let go from a job, but not because you didn't use tool A. You went out and found an open source tool instead. Folks will look for a better way to do things. So why not build that better way, that learning process, into your organization? There's some great resources about learning organizations, continuous improvement, those kind of things that can really be of help. So if you haven't built that into the culture, I think that's a place that I would start. I wish you luck on your DevOps journey.
Hey everyone, Alan Schimmel, CEO, founder of Media Ops here. I want to personally invite you to join us on June 4th for 12 hours strong of TechStrong. TechStrong Con is our conference that we're putting together. You know, the tech industry is so built, and it was such an integral piece of our existence and identity of going to so many conferences, communicating, collaborating, networking, seeing your friends in the industries, your peers. And you know, just because we can't get together in person anymore, we can certainly do it virtually. We've been doing virtual events at Media Ops for 2 years. We think we've got them down. It's, you know, it's a really immersive experience. But what I'm really excited about with TechStrong is, you know, my friend John Willis, my partner in Digital Anarchist, John's put together an amazing lineup of speakers. I think unlike any you've seen at a virtual DevOps, cloud native, DevSecOps, or cybersecurity related conference before. Check it out. Go to techstrongcon.com. Registration, attendance is free, but space is limited. We hope to see you there. It's 12 hours all day, June 4th. techstrongcon.com. Stay well, stay healthy, stay strong. TechStrong.
Hello, I'm Mark Hornbeek. Welcome to the third tutorial in the Engineering DevOps series. I am CEO and Principal Consultant of Engineering DevOps Consulting, an analyst for the Accelerated Strategies Group, an ambassador and course author for the DevOps Institute, a blogger on DevOps.com, and I'm author of the book that you see here called Engineering DevOps. My website is www.engineeringdevops.com. So let's get started. Why is engineering DevOps important? The material in this book is also available in a white paper on my website. You can see on the left, why is engineering DevOps important? The agenda is to cover that, as well as the myths and truths that are pertinent to why it is important to understand engineering DevOps and to practice engineering when doing DevOps. How do you know you have engineering DevOps is an important question. How do you know you've accomplished it? What are the benefits of engineering DevOps when it's engineered well? And what are the consequences if you have poorly engineered your DevOps implementation? And a summary. So let's get into it. First of all, why is engineering DevOps important? It's all about business outcomes. There's no question that, you know, DevOps or anything else has limited value if there isn't some value to the overall business, and engineering DevOps has to do with that, and we'll be talking in detail about why that's true. But generally speaking, you know, DevOps transformations have been known to regularly fail. In other words, they don't accomplish their goals if you do not follow a disciplined engineering DevOps practice or approach, or you may yield some limited benefits with some trade-offs. For example, speed versus quality benefits, or security at the expense of satisfaction, or stability at the expense of efficiency. So there's various trade-offs that other methodologies have accomplished, but engineering DevOps, when engineered properly, provides a practical, disciplined, step-by-step engineering approach to achieve comprehensive improvements without the trade-offs. That's really the whole point of why engineering DevOps is important, and we'll go into that in more detail. There are some myths and associated truths that I would like to lay bare, because these are important to understanding the, you know, the value of engineering DevOps. First of all, you know, it's generally said DevOps is a cultural movement. Certainly DevOps has a lot to do with culture, but the truth is, to accomplish DevOps requires engineering principles and practices to really accomplish it well and consistently. There's another myth, you know, DevOps requires continuous deployments. Well, that's certainly DevOps, but delivering releases without deployments to production also offers benefits, and often that is the case. Your deployment cadence may be less than your actually delivery cadence, so that you can at least validate deliverables and make sure that internally everything is working well before deployments. Another myth, DevOps applies to any software product, service, or application. Well, in some ways it does, but the truth is there are lots of cases where you do not warrant investment in DevOps. There is an investment required in people, process, and technology changes. So there are some guidelines and checklists that I have associated with helping you define whether or not your application is a good candidate for DevOps investment. Just as one example, is if an application doesn't change very often, you probably don't need to invest in DevOps. Another myth, DevOps requires Agile. Well, it certainly complements Agile. DevOps emphasizes more of an end-to-end process optimization, where Agile often focuses more on the front end of the pipeline or value stream, but both do complement each other. Does it require it? Not really, but it certainly helps. There's another myth, the scope of DevOps is the same as the CI/CD pipeline. This could be this is quite untrue. I mean, DevOps extends well into planning and operations and beyond the pipeline, and covers things other than the tool chain and the pipeline. All of these things need to be engineered, not just the pipeline. Another myth is DevOps does not apply to platform products, such as software code embedded in manufactured products. Well, that's certainly not true. I spent much of my career in that industry of manufacturing and applied DevOps regularly, all the principles, practices, and engineering. So how do you know when you've accomplished DevOps? If you go back to Gene Kim's book, the Unix project, he talks about the 3 ways. So it's good to try to relate those 3 ways to something specific that you could measure. The first way of DevOps, called continuous flow. You can know you've got it, if you like, when you have flow existing from planning through to operations. The outcomes are deterministic and repeatable. Each stage has a measurable exit and entry criteria. And generally speaking, automation is employed through most of the stages to prevent serious bottlenecks. So that to me is a good way to determine whether you have continuous flow. The second way of DevOps, continuous feedback, is building on top of the first way. So all of the prior things apply, but in addition, you have metrics directing application release decisions, and you have tools aggregating metrics, log data, and producing reactive analysis that are consistently used. The third way of DevOps, continuous improvement, is accomplished, which is sort of an oxymoron in some ways, because continuous improvement, you're never really finished. But generally speaking, you've already achieved the first way, the second way, and now you're doing regularly retrospectives, identifying improvements, have a culture of doing that. Metrics are proactively analyzed to identify improvements, and experiments are frequently conducted to seek and find new solutions and improvements to the DevOps system itself. So those are ways that you can determine where are you in against the 3 ways, and whether or not you've engineered DevOps consistently to meet the goals of at least one of those 3 ways. So what are the benefits? The State of the DevOps report is a great report, and it talks about essentially 6 categories of benefits which apply to well-engineered DevOps. The holy grail of DevOps, if you like, is to get all of these 6 benefits simultaneously and make those improvements. So we'll talk about that. The benefit categories are agility, stability, efficiency, quality, security, and satisfaction. So many methodologies, like I said, have been able to make improvements to 1 or 2 of these, but often they're at the sacrifice of others. So with DevOps, when it's engineered well, you get all of them simultaneously. Okay, so let's talk about agility for the moment. Agility, really, examples of benefits to reducing the lead time from, let's say, code check-in to deliveries being available for deployment. There's different ways to measure it, and certainly different organizations measure it differently. You can also talk about the frequency of producing deployable releases, or the percent of time employees spend on new work versus rework or other work. You generally work with small batch increments rather than large sections or modules. Workflow is visible throughout the pipeline. There's another key benefit with agility. You want to be able to see what's going on with all the different components. The State of the DevOps report, the one I happen to like, was the 2016 report, which I think the data still applies from my experience. It shows that 200 times more frequent deployments are accomplished with DevOps when engineered properly, and over 2,500, 2,555 times shorter lead times. That's kind of an exact number, but generally speaking, it's true that shorter lead times are a key benefit under the category of agility. Stability. So this has to do with maintaining an operational state of your system, your deployed system, despite disturbances. A focus on mean time to recover or mean time to restore from failure or service outages in production is a key benefit. Having a low percent of code merges from deployment, breaking the trunk branch is a key benefit. The State of the DevOps report talks about quantified benefits, 24 times faster recovery from failures, 3 times lower change failure rates than low-performing organizations. So these are, measurable benefits that well-engineered DevOps systems accomplish. Efficiency. This is about the ratio of useful output to total input produced for release, and the time employees spend on unplanned work and rework is another factor. Metrics for capital costs of development and operations, as well as non-capital costs for development and operations. There are metrics, and you keep track of those in a well-engineered DevOps environment to measure your efficiency. And in general, lean product management practices are practiced and very visible. So the State of the DevOps report talked about 22% less time spent on unplanned work and 29% more time on new work in well-engineered DevOps environments. Quality. Generally speaking, DevOps delivers fewer deficiencies, and significant variations that cause failures are taken care of. Frequency of failures that require immediate remediation is improved, and tests and test data are sufficient and available when needed. And organizations regularly seek and act on customer feedback. So these are some of the characteristics of well-engineered DevOps related to quality. Security. So security has to do with managing risks as it relates to processing and storage, transmission of data. In this case, the benefits occur in the context of fewer number of serious business affecting security events, fewer user accessing unauthorized information, and the time that employees spend on remediating security issues should be less if you're accomplishing a well-engineered DevOps environment. The State of the DevOps report indicated that well-engineered environments spend 50% less time on remediating security issues. Finally, satisfaction in a well-engineered environment. Employees generally feel good about their working environment. They recommend their teams as a great place to work. They recommend their organizations as a great place to work. And the culture is generally practicing good communication flow in a cooperative and trusting culture and spirit. And generally, leaders promote personal and team recognition in well-engineered DevOps environments. So altogether, there's a lot of benefits. What happens if you don't engineer DevOps well? There are a lot of cases out there that you can point to. The one I happen to find startling and interesting is the case of Knight Capital. It was a document, an article that's entitled 45 Minutes of Hell. It was published in April 2014. The basic idea was that one bad deployment caused the trading system to have 4 million invalid transactions within 45 minutes. There was no cutoff switch built into the software. They lost $460 million in 45 minutes, which basically bankrupted the company. There were a lot of potential lessons learned here, but a lot of them have to do with DevOps related things that had they had a well-engineered DevOps could have been avoided. Things such as having good version management, having good rollout and roll forward processes in place, putting circuit breakers in the code and their deployment processes, automating the deployments, and not only the installation but also recovery procedures, having tested deployment process before they're used, instrument the apps and processes with monitoring tools, make sure all the key stakeholders have visibility during deployment, and of course training the staff. So these are all just examples. That's a big example, I guess, of poorly engineered DevOps and consequences of not engineering DevOps well. So basically, that's the tutorial for today. Why is engineering DevOps important? In a nutshell, DevOps, when engineered according to best practices, yields dramatically improved business outcomes, including time to market, efficiency, stability, quality, security, and satisfaction, compared to alternatives of not using them. Thanks for listening. If you want to learn more, as I mentioned, you can go to the website and download a copy of the white paper. under engineeringdevops.com/documents, or you can send me an email at mhornbeek@engineeringdevops.com, or get a copy of my book on mybook.to/engineeringdevops. Thank you again for listening. Looking forward to seeing you in the next course of this series.
With the COVID-19 pandemic, it is important to protect yourself and others from spreading the virus. Prevention and personal safety is key. Here are the top ways you can protect yourself and others. Wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Avoid touching your face. Practice social distancing and avoid high-risk potential people. If you are showing symptoms, stay at home. If you must go out, wear a face mask. Always cover coughs and sneezes with a tissue, or use the inside of your elbow. Clean and sanitize frequently touched surfaces daily. Together, we can prevent this pandemic.
Okay, thanks very much to Mitch and Mark. Good segments today from our friends at Accelerated Strategies Group. You know what? I think that's going to call a wrap on today's show. That's all I see up on our production schedule, so that means it's the end of the day. But hey, never fear. We will be back tomorrow with another great lineup of interviews and news. And we hope to see you then. Until then, stay safe, stay well, stay strong. TechStrong. This is Alan Schimmel. We're out.